Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulullah wa ba'd. Um, for those of you who are not familiar, I've done a video already concerning um, experiences and advice on how to learn the Arabic language. For those, and some methods that can help you sort of get through your difficulties that you may be having. Sometimes people they run into a wall and they're not sure how to get over it. So, inshallah, this will be a series of videos giving some general tips, some advice based on personal experience, and I'll talk also about my personal experience with certain things that helped me, and hopefully they will help you as well, inshallah. So today, what I want to talk about is a book by a scholar, Sheikh AbdulKarim Parekh, which he had originally done, I believe, in Urdu. It was Arabic and Urdu, and it's been translated into English by the title of The Easy Dictionary of the Quran, compiled in order of recitation. This is it that you can see on your screen. Um, Obviously, I would recommend anyone who's going to use this book, they get a physical copy of it. But if you search, you will find the PDF easily as well. Obviously, publishers go to great lengths to and expense and what have you to publish their books. So I would highly encourage everyone actually who's going to use the book, please buy a copy of the book. It shouldn't be very expensive. It's a small book. We don't want to hurt the publisher, but for those who can't, the book is available on PDF. Basically, what I want to do is just talk a little bit about how this book helped me build my vocabulary. And for those of you who have seen the previous video, you may recall I spoke about how one of the biggest barriers that people run into when they're learning the Arabic language is lack of vocabulary. You can go through a particular curriculum that will give you a basic amount of vocabulary, but you will, to get to the point where you can start reading on your own, you need to really build your vocabulary much more than you will get from a single textbook or single set of textbooks, because any single textbook or set of textbooks is only going to give you only so many words. So 1,000 words, 2,000 words, even 3,000 words. That's a good base, but it won't get to you to the point where you can read independently. Now, one of the things that is nice about this book is that it focuses on the vocabulary of the Quran, and it's not organized as a conventional dictionary. So you're not going to look up the words alphabetically. It follows the order of the Quran. And so what the author has done is, as you're going through the Quran, starting from Surah Al-Fatiha, and there's one thing that, if you're going to go through this book, then you really need to go through it in the order of the Quran to get the full benefit of it. What he has done is, starting with Surah Al-Fatiha, anytime a word comes up for the first time, he explains it. Or rather, he doesn't really explain it. He gives you an English synonym. This is obviously the translated version, because I think it was originally that. But so Alhamd, for example, is praise. Allah, of course, is the personal name of God. Rabb means Lord. Alameen, the worlds. Now, the explanation of Alameen as the worlds is a little bit ambiguous, because what exactly does that mean, the worlds? That's something that if you were to read into in a little bit more depth in commentaries on the Quran, you would find that it's not actually quite that straightforward. So he's not going to give you that kind of detail. You just get the vocabulary that this word means this word means this. In any case, the nice thing about this dictionary is that each new word that comes up, he will introduce it and explain. And then as you're moving forward, the number of new words that you will have to learn becomes less and less. Another thing that he does that is nice is that if a word is not being used frequently in the Quran, let's say it only comes up twice in the Quran, and you got it once in the first juz, and then it doesn't come up again for another couple of ajza, another couple of siparas. What will happen is that by that time you might very well have forgotten it. So in that case, he will actually repeat it. But generally speaking, he doesn't repeat the words. And the idea is that as you're reading through the Quran, you're picking up the words. And so with this dictionary, what it actually has done is the first juz, just the first juz of the Quran, is actually about 1/6 of the entire dictionary. So by the time you finish the first juz, you have learned about 16, 17% of all of the vocabulary of the Quran, all the words in the Quran. By the time you finish Surah Al-Baqarah, you have done a full 25% of the dictionary, a quarter of the words in the Quran. And the other thing that is helpful with that is that obviously some words come up again and again and again. And then there are other words that come up a handful of times, or maybe even just once. And so what that will do is that probably if you study this, going from Surah Al-Fatiha, and by the time you get to the end of Surah Al-Baqarah, if you've acquired the vocabulary and you know the words, what you will find is that generally speaking, you'll be able to open up sort of at random anywhere in the Mus'haf and probably understand a good 50%, 60%, 70%, 80%, 85%, whatever of what you are reading. And so in many verses, you might find that you actually know almost all of the words, and there's just one or two words in the verse that are new to you and that you're unfamiliar with, because in terms of the actual number of words that you've covered, maybe you've only covered 1/4 of the words. But again, some words are going to repeat a lot. Some words are going to repeat a lot. And so by the time you've done just Surah Al-Baqarah, you will actually have enough vocabulary that you can start reading the Quran and understanding it. And again, when I say understanding it, I'm not suggesting that you're going to understand it at the level of Imam al-Tabari or Ibn Ashur or any of the famous Mufassirin. I'm not saying that you're going to understand it at the level of someone who is a master of the language, but the point is that you will be able to read the Quran and grasp part of the meaning, at least, of what you are reading, a significant part of it. You will be able to stand in Salah, stand in Taraweeh, and hear the Imam reciting verses. Perhaps you might not even know which surah is reciting. It might be a surah that you're not familiar with. And yet in Salah, you will be understanding part or most of what you are hearing. And so for people who are learning the Arabic language for the first time, this is a very big thing. For many of you, your goal might not actually be to become fluent in the Arabic language to the point that you start reading books and studying and being a talib ilm, because that's not everybody's goal. I mean, some people, they have that goal, and it's an admirable goal. But if you don't have that goal of as a Muslim, obviously you want to be able to pray and benefit from your prayer. You want and a big part of that is Taraweeh. Taraweeh, when we pray every year, you hear the Imam reciting, and it can be a little bit difficult because you don't understand a lot of what is being recited. But when you know the vocabulary, and again, I'm not saying that you know the vocabulary that you've mastered yet. I'm saying you just have familiarity with the vocabulary and have an idea of a good idea of what is being said, you're able to follow along with the imam, and so you get a spiritual benefit from the prayer that is difficult to gain otherwise. And so this will help you in your ibadat. This will help you in your salah. And I think for a lot of people, obviously that in of itself is it's a huge achievement. I mean, I actually remember, when I was studying Arabic and I was going through this book. I remember one day being in the masjid. It wasn't even tarawih or anything. It was just normal day in the masjid. One of the out loud prayers. Maybe it was Maghrib or Isha. I don't remember. Um, the Imam is reciting, and I wasn't sure what verses he was reciting. It wasn't a surah that I really knew or had studied. And all of a sudden, I was like, "Hey, I'm actually understanding what he's reading. Not 100%, but a lot of it, I'm understanding it." And so, just even that experience for me personally, it was something that it was a big encouragement to keep going with my studies. Because I know that one thing that people have a problem with is that gap that exists between studying a textbook to being able to read for yourself and understand what you're reading. It's a pretty big gap, and when you're stuck in that gap, you can get pretty frustrated. And so one way to this is something that will help you get over that frustration, because you start your efforts are already bearing fruit. When you do this, your efforts are already bearing fruit. For myself personally, my experience with this book, I went as I was going through it. What I was doing is, every day I would read Surah Al-Baqarah. I would read the surah. Of course, I had a translation of the Quran, and so I would go through the surah and maybe consult the translations every once in a while. And I was learning the words, and I think maybe I had a notebook and I was writing them down, just as a way to increase retention. And so every day I would read some, maybe memorize a few verses. I would, and then in my free time, just in my commutes in the car, I would listen to Surah Al-Baqarah. And so I did this for a couple of months. And this is while I was going to university. I was a full-time university student. Um, uh, it wasn't that I was studying Arabic at the time full time. I wasn't, a talib ilm or anything like that. I wanted to learn Arabic and I was going to university. So in my free time, I would do this. And so every day I would put in a little bit of time reading Surah Al-Baqarah. And then just in my commutes, I would listen to Surah Al-Baqarah in the car. And maybe even, when I was at home, I would play Surah Al-Baqarah. Find the recitation that you like. I try and find a recitation or reciters whose recitation is also fairly clear, because you want to get accustomed to hearing the Quran, hearing the sounds of the Arabic language, emulating the sounds of the Arabic language. That also help with your retention of what you're learning of the language. And inshallah, in another session, I would like to talk about the benefit of studying tajweed as a part of your language studies, or how it can help you in acquiring the Arabic language. So this was a tool that I used. It was something that it really helped me. It gave me a great deal of encouragement, because once I felt that I'm actually getting this benefit, which is a very tangible benefit, it was really a big encouragement for me to keep going, because I felt, okay, you know what, this is worth it. And whereas there was for me a time when there would be times when I would get frustrated, because it took me a while to sort of figure out how to bridge that gap between having done a basic curriculum and learned the basics of the grammar and being able to read and have some vocabulary, to being able to read independently, to being able to just pick up a book and start reading. that gap, because it was a little bit difficult to get through that gap, and I was more or less learning on my own and sort of figuring things out as I went. It could get frustrating, but one of the things that will help you get over frustration is having landmarks like this that you've achieved. And obviously, this is the most important achievement. Honestly, I think for a lot of people out there who want to learn Arabic, their goal might simply be, look, I just want to be able to understand the Quran when I read it. I just want to be able to understand the Quran when I read it. I want to be able to understand the Quran when I hear it. And if you can achieve that, then alhamdulillah, that's a great achievement. So this is an excellent tool that will help you do that. It's at a basic level, but this is a basic level that every person can aspire to, and every person can achieve. It's not difficult. I mean, when I was doing this, I'd already learned some of the basics and gone through some curriculum. And again, in the previous video, I talked about this. You can do that with any curriculum. It can be a Western textbook. It can be some of the Eastern textbooks, like Al-Arabiya Bayna Yadayk or the Medina books, or any other set that will give you the basics of how the language works, and examples that illustrate the grammatical structure and what have you, as well as giving you some vocabulary along the way. You'll need to get that down, and then go through this work or something similar, and you will find that you're able to read the Quran and understand what the Quran is saying. Again, I'm not saying that you're going to be Sibawayh. I'm not saying that you're going to be Ibn Jarir al-Tabari or Imam al-Razi or Ibn Kathir or Ibn Ashur or Sheikh al-Sa'di, or whoever it is that you might aspire to be, or that you look up to amongst the Mufassirin. I'm not going to say that. I'm not saying that you're going to be like that, but you will be able to engage with the Quran in a meaningful manner. And so this is something that if you get to it, inshallah, for the regular Muslim, that's a big accomplishment, and it's something that every Muslim should aspire to. And for the person who's serious about really mastering the language, it's a very good stepping stone that you've achieved this, and you want to keep going. Now you are able to engage with the Quran in a meaningful fashion and understand what you're reading. Okay, so the next step is you want to be able to understand the Quran deeply, and so from this step, this will be an excellent way to keep going. For me personally, in the very beginning, I spent a good bit of time, a couple of months, on Surah Al-Baqarah. And then, for whatever reason, I became fascinated with Surah Al-A'raf, and so I used to listen to Surah Al-A'raf a lot. And so, as my Arabic started improving, I started taking certain verses of Surah Al-A'raf and looking them up in books of tafsir, because now I'm starting to be. By this point, I'd started doing other things, and my vocabulary was slowly expanding, and I was starting being able to understand some of what I was reading. So I would look up verses. And I remember looking up the story of the verses about Ashab al-Araf, which are the people who are standing in the barrier that is between Jannah and Jahannam. It's neither here nor there. They're just sort of in limbo in between, in the hereafter. I remember looking up the verses about. I remember looking up the commentary of these verses and looking through them. And also some other verses, reading them in Tafsir al-Tabari and Tafsir ibn Kathir at that time, trying to understand more about these verses. And so from there, I just kept going. So hopefully this is something, it helped me. It was very easy, as it's in the name is as it indicates, Easy Dictionary of the Quran. It's not a big, thick book. I used it personally, and it benefited me. I had a friend who was also at the university at the time. He was actually had come from India to the United States to study. Was doing a master's in computer science, and around the time that he finished his master's in computer science, and he was basically working odd jobs and applying for positions. Hadn't found anything yet. He had he had some time for a couple of months, because his master's was done now. In his free time when he wasn't working, he was working on his Arabic, and so I had given him some materials. I'd helped him out. I think maybe even um, went through some basic things with him. He had started learning the basics, and I gave him my copy of this book. Um, and he went through it, and alhamdulillah, it benefited him as well. And then I think he passed it on to someone else who was learning. So I don't actually have a physical copy of the book anymore, the original copy that I used. But it was very beneficial for me, and I found, with my experience, I've recommended this to others, starting with this brother, and it was beneficial for him. Within some time, he was able to also start, reading the Quran and understanding the Quran more. And other people I have given this advice over the years. This is one of the resources that I've recommended to people. This is something that, inshallah, you will also hopefully benefit from. And in case, Jazakumullah khairan for your time. And I hope that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give all of us the tawfiq to uh, learn the Arabic language and to better understand his book and to practice on it. Sallallahu wasallam ala nabiyyina